Hi, and welcome to a new episode of a Serious Session. Today we are going to have another wonderful guest. He is British, he's from Essex. He recently became the technical director of Torque, and he is quite known for his videos sometimes. I think it was one of the first doing the classic TikTok style video about SEO, and he's a really gentle man. His name is Chris Green. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hi, yeah, great to be here. And yeah, what an intro. Thank you.
Everything well deserved. How SEO is treating you in these last I don't want to even say weeks, it's even month of really
Yeah,
big changes.
I'd say once I got over the fear part, I think if you'd have asked me that about 8 months ago, maybe when we were really talking about SGEs back then and what that could mean, I think it was probably slightly more, my response would have been more fear based. But I think today, having researched what I've researched, I feel fairly confident that that existential dread is gone and it's been replaced by just from me excitement because it's just an opportunity to learn more systems again, and it sort of reminds me back when SEO, I guess part one or version one was sort of super new, and we were still learning and discovering as we go. And I'm just really enjoying being back there. A lot of work to do. A lot of people asking questions I don't have as satisfactory answers for yet, but we'll get there.
Yes, I have the same sensation, and I when back in the day we have more than one search engine to pay attention to, and now there are not even only search engines. And And it's nice to be a student again. Yes,
Yes.
it's difficult. It's difficult to stay up to date with all the news or all the evolution very fast that is popping up. This is maybe the big difference with respect in the days. Back in the days, the pace was quieter. But yes, when SGA was just a test, there was a lot of fears, but now
Mhm.
it's more. We also can see it from many publications of people, also from you, but other peers in the industry, starting to share not only what is this and what is that, but how you can do this, how can you do that, etc., etc., etc. So the starting, the start guides and actionable tips and ideas and work, checklists and something like this, and
Mhm.
also maybe the only things that are still to evolve a little bit faster are tools, but tools are already getting into into this necessity the SEO industry has for reliable data. We
Mhm.
are also hosted by Advanced Web Ranking. Advanced Web Ranking, one of the oldest tools in everything rank tracking and analysis. Also, Advanced Web Ranking has now gives the possibility to trace the visibility in ChatGPT and so on.
Mhm.
Similar to Wiki somehow,
Yeah.
because it's about topics more than prompts and searches, but it's a good example of how also the tools are evolving. However, you were also saying in one of your most recent posts on LinkedIn that, okay, when everything is changes, it's
Mhm.
normal to try to be scared. And this still is somehow the general sensation we can have from all the people surrounding us, not only SEO, but also sometimes even businesses.
Mhm.
And when it comes to these kind of changes, it is natural to try to find those things that are persisting, that are still valid.
Yeah.
And what are these things for you?
I've given like SEO 101 training to many people over the years, and one of the things I kind of really try and hammered home was the just fundamentally like the core principles or the core of what we were trying to do, assuming we're not sort of black hat oriented, I guess is the same and hasn't really changed. The detail has and the tactics have. And I think now I have to eat my words a little bit because we are in a period of significant change. But yeah, if you want to steady yourself against that feeling of being swept away or being afraid, that there are still definitely some core things. And I think the looking at content recommendations or people's predictions about how we might use things like query fan out and other techniques to possibly create content, and a lot of that is moving in the direction of what we've been doing should have been doing broadly anyway. So the whole notion of developing like topical clusters, content that really shows users and Google your deep expertise in a specific area, answering questions that users may have along their journey. So not just at that point of kind of commercial interaction or the point of your content, but try and anticipate the need or the intent and maybe the next question. Those in theory, a lot of those things that we really should have been doing for the last couple of years anyway. I mean, I still remember back to one of the earliest times I heard Jono talking at a conference. He was saying, if someone has a dead pixel in their TV, they may not know it yet, but they need to buy a new TV. So if I'm trying to sell TVs, surely I want to speak to the person who's Googling what a dead pixel is, or why is my screen looking strange? Like there's that whole kind of principle of trying to own or try to have content throughout your customer's journey shouldn't have been something that we waited for AI mode to start doing. However, I would say this is a fantastic opportunity to kind of revisit a lot of that. But even so, just having a deep understanding of customer needs, the customer's journey, signs, what kinds of queries can we use to infer their level of knowledge, their level of intent? How can we qualify a customer based on that data? Like I guess a lot of that's still the same on the content side. And then if we move to technical, for example, a lot of the core technical we need to worry about is again broadly similar. We're in the business of we have a bot visiting our site, looking at our content, and our job is to reduce as much friction as we can. So what's going to stop that bot seeing the content that we want to be recognized for? Now, on the technical side, there are some elements that are different. I mean, broadly, LLM crawlers are just not as good as Google, and we have to accommodate for that. Like emphasis on not using client-side scripts to render content, but that's been a technical SEO staple for a while, and I think ideologically, I don't think that optimizing for one crawler is a great tactic. I think where budget and time permits it, you should optimize for the worst crawler that hits your website, and you're always going to effectively be in a technically a good place, or you're going to reduce a lot of overhead for those other crawlers that are, I guess, technically better. So I think there's a lot of constants around that. I mean, we can start going into some of the minutiae. You've talked about tools. I think tools, tracking, reporting success are some of the ones that are maybe should be some of the least comfortable for people right now, because I don't think we have fully formed alternatives. That said, like everyone's saying, rank tracking is going to struggle if it doesn't evolve quickly. And I think actually rank tracking has been struggling for a while. Trying to get users to move away from like organic position, trying to get users to move away from 10 blue links. Think about pixel depth, think about click-through rate. They're far more useful metrics. We haven't moved that direction yet. And I do think that conventional method will be gone probably sooner than later now, assuming that AI mode will roll out and become more ubiquitous in whatever form it kind of then takes. So I'd say there's some constants, and then there's a less constant one for you there.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I mean the classic tracking tool, like you are in position one, you are in position two, etc., 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 and these are the SERP features are not so good. The most advanced one, yes, they present you the pixel position, and I think that the pixel position surely is something super interesting, because then you can relate it to the CTR, but also you can say sometimes the tracking tool are some tracking tool, not always tracking tool. But some tracking tool are just telling you about you are in organic, just the classic organic search results. Some others maybe tell you, okay, you are also in people also ask, but not something more. Instead, I think that because click is ranking was somehow also already dead a long time ago, but now click is maybe diminishing
Mm.
as metric, because we know that with AI overview especially, the click-through rate is really, really shrinking. Now it's visibility, but how can we calculate the value of visibility? So maybe,
Mm.
in fact, lately I started to consider the idea, okay, visibility for visibility, it's just noise. So maybe it's how much we are visible. For instance, in one SERP alone,
Mhm.
maybe we are occupying presence in AI overview, we are present with the classic search results, and maybe we are also present with an image. So we can, with pixel calculations, so knowing how much space a feature is occupying in the SERP, we can say, okay, considering an average of X pixel for a SERP, we are occupying the 40% of a SERP. And this can be a way to start reasoning about the impact of the visibility and the rate of attention that we are conquering toward
Mhm.
the people searching. So this is maybe the biggest change, not everything that you also were saying, because there are things that us SEO should have been doing for many years now, both technically and both in terms of architecture and content. But the metric for me is the real big change. We are maybe struggling the most in this period of passage. And this is the vision from us, but from our side. So SEO, what is your pulse from working in an agency as Torque from the business side? So from the clients approaching you or your clients that are already with you, how
Mhm.
do you see they are feeling and living this change?
Ooh, yeah. Right now, I think there's still a huge degree of we've heard stuff about this, about AI in search, and we know AI is really big. So what does that mean for us, and where are we in it? I think interestingly, I'd say we've had more client feedback when people have gotten closer to actually using like AI tools themselves, from asking ChatGPT to generate a marketing strategy or suggest some target keywords, or then as people start to kind of make commercial buying decisions based on ChatGPT data and things like that. I think the concern or the acknowledgement that this is potentially really disruptive has started to really land. I think the big announcement that AI mode is being launched sort of officially into the US for certainly for US clients was a bit of a change because obviously that made a lot of news stories, and I think people suddenly were like, "Whoa, wait, something big's changing. What does this mean?" So I think that's generally the question right now is what does this mean for us? How is it changing? I think until very recently, it was tricky to really judge the impact, I would say. I mean, for businesses that were more present in AI overviews, they could start to see the impact slightly sooner. But for some of my clients who are less top of funnel, they've classically been targeting more bottom of funnel. I think seeing disruption from any kind of AI-based search has been challenging. We've looked in Google Analytics, we've looked at, which AI chatbots have been referring traffic. We've been seeing, well, what's the possible loss of clicks from AI overviews? And it wasn't really until even, I'd say, March this year, until that we had this massive, like a much wider expansion of AIOs, that we really start to see much change there for that. Whereas now, and I'm seeing this picture across other industries, but other people working in similar clients is that clicks are starting to drop, but impressions are starting to rise. That kind of paradigm is starting to play out, and I think people are getting generally more concerned now. And it's, well, okay, if we can't track these things as well, do we know how visible we are? And then it comes back to, as you said, the tools question. The tools and the reportability of the changes haven't quite caught up with the picture of today. So there's still a little bit of being unknown. I mean, I've done some work around, pulling ChatGPT data, and some of our tools can pull some general AI overview data. But a lot of the positioning today is just more steadying people to say, look, it's not having a dramatic impact on traffic right now. It will do, and for some businesses and some industries, it is. But I think a lot of it is coming down to what most people are asking for is, well, what are we going to do about it? And generally speaking, I'm finding, okay, whilst I've just said there's a lot of continuity in theory, or certainly in principle, it's a lot of the tactics or specifics are having to start to change. And I think there's a lot of interest in what are these changes now? Like, okay, you can explain the theory of this, but how do we actually do it? And we're starting to see more examples from the community, people that are kind of starting to actively put this in place and tell that story. But I still think a lot of that is being formed right now. I'm certainly using this as an opportunity of saying, well, AI generated content, AI search results are coming from content. You know, Google and other services have gone out, reduced your content into chunks, and they will return the most relevant chunks to that query and the found out queries at that time. Quite simply, if you're not providing the information, somebody else is going to, or worse, that information may just get made up or extrapolated from another source entirely. So there's a degree of, I'm using this as an opportunity to really hammer home well, if visibility is now key, if we can't bank on clicks as being a good measure, if you want to be as visible as you can do, you have to pony up and bring forward that content. And that's not just long form. It's not write 2,000 words on X subject, because that's something SEOs have had in their playbook for years. It's more, it's got to be smarter than that. Like, do we really understand what content pieces, what snippets we need along this journey? And also, by the way, we have to factor in personalization a bit more. So we certainly have enough to start talking to clients about. I think we're in a very good position that out of anybody in the mix, we're the best to answer these questions. Google doesn't have the answers to a lot of it yet. So I think everyone's lagging a little bit behind the speed of development.
Yeah, yes. And I think that at least for me, nicest news is that, okay, we have a strong technical foundation, but what is coming out again is we're doing marketing again,
Yeah.
finally. Because if visibility is purpose and visibility, as I was saying before, it just noise. So you have to be able to nudge the attention, and so becoming memorable. So in this case, also in terms of metric, how the direct traffic is growing, maybe in correlation with the visibility you have on search, how much the branded searches are growing, etc., etc., etc. This means that people have a memory of you, positive memory of you.
Mhm.
And this leads to what you were also anticipating, which is personalization. Because then, because our Google and also ChatGPT and the other system really rely on memory. So being in the memory of the browser of a user is the purpose for an SEO. Because so we are going, maybe we shouldn't even ranking, but because we are in memory, we are going to be surfaced and presented. Hey, this
Mm.
guy is also the one telling these things or talking about that other things. And this means essentially making marketing, because if you want to be remembered, you cannot be like 100 other brands. You must have your own voice, you must have your own USP, which maybe is customer care, is not even the content. It's you care about the experience of the people when landing on your website. And so, again, usability, technical perfection, etc., etc., etc. But talking about AI, how now returning to your daily work,
Mhm.
how you included and start to use AI? I mean, I think that usually there are two kind of SEO. The, as we say in Spanish, manitas, so the guys that are really able to and really strong will of I'm taking the API, I start to play with this model using Python, blah, 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 and build their own tool. This is not really me because I'm really bad in these things, but I have my vibe things. And
Yeah.
what about you?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest things I've done is using AI to build workflows from small ones to larger ones. So there's a lot of people kind of coming out on that, and have a knowledge of Python, JavaScript, command line, various things, but I'm not a gifted engineer or programmer, and frankly never will be. So for me, the opportunity was just the ability to actually start realizing a lot of the ideas that I had. I think knowing what I could pull from APIs, what data I can get, what kind of how we needed to start thinking about challenges and problems was stuff that I'd already got nailed down. And I think for me, AI has a lot of the assistive coding stuff has really helped me realize that. And broadly over the last more than 6 months, I've been working out, okay, not how to be a better programmer, but how to be a better prompter, as much as I kind of hate using those words, but kind of learning what is the AI assistant good for? What am I good for? How do we ideate ideas? Where are the common pitfalls going to be? How do you allow some room for error? Obviously, AI is not immune to making mistakes or hallucinating, and its overconfidence makes it dangerous. Like, how do you build that in? So, if you are calling data from an API, are you saving every API call that's made? Are you keeping all of the raw data so you can kind of review it yourselves? If you're asking, if you're doing some analysis work, are you breaking down each stage of the analysis so you can kind of really understand when you need to go into the debugging work, why is it not working? This AI assistant isn't telling me. You can kind of do that yourself. So that kind of thing, I feel like I've built up a lot of, and it's been quite liberating to say the least in terms of what it's starting to enable me to do. There's a lot of challenges that I'm solving, but it's small things. It's like, how in particular instances, I just need to crawl sitemaps really quickly. I know I have tools that can do it, but for this particular workflow and the particular things that I needed to analyze and I needed to repeat it 10, 20, 30, 40 times at a time, it was just easier just to write something, I think, that I did in terminal that could just run it. That worked nicely. Other people said they needed it. Just got ChatGPT to convert that into Streamlit, so into Python that worked with the Streamlit application, then host it on Streamlit. I can then give it to other people. So that kind of thing has really sped things up. And I've said this to a few now, and it won't be long until agencies, consultancies, even some in-house teams, we're becoming more just workflow builders rather than other things. And it's not saying just workflow builders as if it's a small inconsequential thing. Like, we all have the ability to do some far more powerful things with just what we can do with SEO, with tools, with data sources. Like, we can cover more ground far quicker, or we can say more insightful things without the cost or the time overhead. But we're all in that same ballpark now. Like, in theory, anybody can kind of do it. It's kind of democratized to an extent, that level of working. But now it's a case of, well, if anyone could build a workflow, where's the value? And it's kind of more about, how do we tailor these workflows to the business context or the commercial context in which it exists. I can post a video about how I've done redirect mapping for hundreds of websites using, vector embeddings and kind of finding the best matches based on that. But the process that I've built for that for my clients is highly specific to their URL structure, to their business and website logic, that has exceptions, that has rules. I've used vector embeddings for some parts of the matches, and I've used fuzzy matching for other parts, because there are certain scenarios where I want one over the other. That really specific technical detail is not useful to anybody else other than that given situation. But I've been able to do that right now because of what I've been able to do via these kind of assistive AI functions. So there are other smaller things, but that's how I've been utilizing it. Just open your mind to, I couldn't solve this problem before, but now you possibly can solve it in a completely different way. So revisit those old problems and see what you can do different.
Correct, because this is somehow the same attitude I have toward how to use AI. With time, I discovered that more than the task and describing very well the task, the most important thing when we are using prompts is really be able to define the context. Now, I started to treat Gemini or ChatGPT or sometimes also Claude as they were my own very junior SEO, where I'm explaining everything very, very with detail in order for him to do the job and then me reviewing it. And I think that a good exercise, as we were used to do a lot of testing in our own website, playgrounds, et cetera, back in the days, now maybe we can do the same, but using, for instance, for analysis, taking a topic, something that we really know well, so that we are sure we are not going to believe in some hallucination. So
Mm.
we can use this knowledge we have about a topic in order to start creating different types of prompts, especially use them for defining the boundaries of an architecture or updating an architecture. So I can understand if what is suggesting to me the ChatGPT is reasonable or not. So maybe this is a good way to start learning how a machine is working. And
Mm.
also, as a consequence, you're starting to learn better why is choosing one thing, another thing. So also the mechanics of how the LLMs work. So this is kind of knowledge that then you can export in order to, okay, we have a client about this topic. Let's see how can we optimize and work on chunks, the classic chunks. I prefer
Mhm.
snackable content because the LLMs are like Pac-Man eating eating our content, and doing so it's a good way. And what I've seen is that the most precious conquer is time. We are conquering a lot of time, even if we are spending a lot of time in the beginning in order to find the correct things to give to AI to work with. But then when you are more or less fine with what is the output, it's really freeing for the value, for where the value of our job exists and reside, which is offering our own insights. It's like when everybody was happy when crawlers like Sidebulb, Screaming Frog were coming out. And so we were not using just Sinu and
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to understand everything from zero. And but we know that, well, even they are wonderful tools, obviously then you have to know what you're seeing. So
Yeah.
having AI giving you the opportunity to have more time for having
Yep.
this kind of for yourself to offer this time for insights, maybe even creative idea is maybe our best outcomes. And going to change a little bit and not talking about AI. This is a question that I started to ask to other guests lately. And is, okay, let's say that your a new client is coming. Okay, you have done all the brief, all the thing. But let's say for the first time you are going to see the website with an SEO high. What is the first thing you're going to check?
Ooh. I think if I have it, Google Search Console, probably one of the first. Not the first. I think the first is I look at the homepage and I click around. I usually just disable JavaScript and then re-enable it. So a few old habits. Check the robots text file and then start poking around. I think that they're the kind of the key things, and that's kind of where my technical background is. But I think I try to get a feel for what is it? Can I infer from the website and the experience of the key pages what I want to do and where in the journey the website thinks I am? Because I think historically, a lot of the website when I was much more kind of agency focused rather than consultancy, a lot of my clients were B2B. A lot of them were very, very niche, so very kind of very specific. And I think that I just got so used to people building websites where they assumed that people understood their jargon, the business's jargon. People assumed that was the language that everyone spoke, and that people had come to the website knowing what they needed. And that's still, I think generally the level of maturity is a lot higher than that, but I still find that's where websites quite often fall down. Like most technical things are either solvable or not a large enough problem to fundamentally stop you doing what you need to. Like bad websites can rank well. That's super evident. And perfectly technical websites that are perfect with standards can also not rank for anything. I think the fundamental part, and where I spend most of my time now, is that do we even know how these users are finding us, what their knowledge level is, what they seek to achieve? But no, the very first things are the ones I can't help myself with. Just start tinkering. Like, how much JavaScript is this site using? What paths or directories are they blocking in robots? I think this is a lot of things you can kind of discover that way. That I would say that I probably don't do that as much as I used to do. I think like most junior SEOs, as soon as you learn about robots or sitemaps or like some meta tags and stuff, you kind of can't help yourself but look, and you always have a snigger or laugh to yourself when you find a website that's still spamming the keywords meta tag or something like that. But I do that slightly less now. I think it's much more about actually, does this website know who their customer is? And I think you can learn that quite quickly by looking.
Another thing is because for a long time already, when we talk about organic search, we are not just thinking about the classic search results or be sophisticated, very rich results, but we expanded to, at least the video because of the presence of YouTube on SERP. But then we started to see how the new generation, especially, started to use other environments for searching. Classic example, the TikTok and Instagram used by the younger generation for searching things
Mm.
to do and to eat and where to go. So, how much of this, let's say, classic framework like website and search engine, Google, and how much did you started to move and expand your analysis and your insights for your clients also to other platforms, which are not
Yeah.
necessarily Google, but that are interacting in the search journey with Google?
Yeah. So right now, a lot of my clients, we're fairly siloed in a remit in that, you know, social or paid have other teams, and there's a degree of we have the most flexibility and ability to impact in the channel or the remit that we kind of been brought under, which adds for a point of clarity, but kind of frustrate things. I mean, as you said, like the traffic via traditional search means, i.e. 10 blue links, organic, straight in, is dropping because the search landscape is and has fragmented quite a lot. One of the places that I look to or try and get involved in sooner than later is other feed based kind of things. So Google Merchant Feed or things around like hotels or jobs or Google My Business. I think I still find myself very grounded in the Google part of it, and I think that changing very quickly now, more in the direction of chatbots and similar. But making sure one of the key recommendations I give to everyone is you want to every box that Google gives you the opportunity to fill, you know, product data, business data, etc. Fill it with the most accurate information that you want to reflect on. And that sounds like painfully simple and not like super insightful. But frankly, we're in a world where there are so many places where Google or other services can go to get data about you. And I think you need to take the opportunity to input that yourself. And again, if you're not giving this data to people and it's not obviously from you, it gives other people the opportunity to, or frankly, sites kind of make it up or start to kind of get in there. So I think pushing out into other areas is one that I do. I tend to find myself more in the technical and the data end. So building a lot more insights from other platforms, trending hashtags, trends data, merchant data, ads data. I try to get myself towards BigQuery or whatever database layout we've got or whatever data viz tools we've got. Because I find even if we're not working on those other sources directly, it all impacts us. Again, that SERP is a busy place. There's so many other features that aren't traditionally organic. And also other media and marketing activity has such an impact on trends, interest, demand that I don't think you can truly be effective unless you can at least report on it and see it. And a common, really, really common one is paid branded activity. Client increases their paid branded activity, but a lot of their organic traffic is branded. Oh, organic's dropping. Why? Well, intuitively, it's because you're putting paid ads above it where there otherwise wasn't. So you're losing a share of your clicks. And now you're paying. But that kind of conversation is so easy to have. It's actually harder to solve in reality, but that's one area that I find myself looking to. Equally, merchant feeds like Google Merchant Center gives you a price differential. Like on average, are your prices higher or lower than other merchants targeting the same inventory? Any kind of shopping listings, whether they're in organic results, whether they're in the shopping tab, whether they're going to be resurfaced in kind of AI generated results, people are going to click on cheaper versions of the same product if they're given that option. Obviously, there's trust, there's ratings, there's shipping, there's other things, but price, availability are all really key features. So again, if I want to be talking about why organic traffic, revenue, conversion rate is dropping, well, I need to be knowing, well, are we as price competitive as we have? Do we have the stock availability? Is our delivery or returns policies in line with other people? So I don't want to use the word holistic because I still work in a relatively small niche, but I think there's a lot of data and other things that we can kind of pull in, even if it's to impact our channel. I still think the overall sweet spot is you want to be looking at as much of this user's journey as possible, like the channels that we create paid search, paid social, organic social, email, etc. Like these are just kind of swim lanes that we've generated because that's broadly the skill sets you need to manage it. Obviously, users are completely oblivious to that distinction, and so they should be. So I think there's quite a strong argument to be like, well, if we need to be user centric in how we market to these people, surely we need to just follow them wherever they're going, rather than just sat waiting for them to hit our given channel. And there's still a degree of that, and a lot of organizations are built that way. So again, just redefining that in a large org is hard and takes years. And yeah.
I completely agree. And I want now to ask you a question because we were talking of different formats. And you actually experimented for your own personal brand, let's call it so, with the short format or the
Yeah.
TikTok vertical video format. And the name was beautiful. The name of your series, it depends. So I have two questions. What was the impact that you see on yourself from doing this kind of video, and especially in some placing them in environments that usually are not thought for communicating SEO thing,
Mhm.
SEO knowledge? And secondly, about it depends. What is the it depends that really makes you roll your eyes like a gyroscope?
Oh, okay. There's two biggies. So I think the impact to me for doing it, I think SEO is a fairly small place, and I'm certainly not like chasing clicks in a or views in a kind of a viral sense. I'm under no illusion some strange bearded man's going to go viral for giving slightly thoughtful takes on things. But I think actually anecdotally, I meet a lot of people who have seen them and get some kind of value from them, and I think I intentionally try to answer other people's "it depends" ones, so it's giving them the opportunity of or just hopefully understanding that thing a little better in just kind of an easier way. I've benefited greatly personally because for every 60-second "it depends" video I make, I have to really actually understand enough of the angles to explain it succinctly enough. So I very quickly realized that that was what I took more of, like forming your ideas into a 60-second chunk that loops. It's a slight gimmick of the format, but like it was quite a nice degree of mental agility. If someone asks me, or if someone poses to me an "it depends" question, or someone asks me a question that I struggle to answer without using "it depends," I really latch onto those and I save them. I haven't made a video for a few weeks 'cause I've been super busy, but I have a I have a list of these questions that I really want to know how I can answer that in 60 seconds. So that's something that I take as I guess, a personal challenge. The "it depends" question that causes me to roll my eyes, that's a challenging one because there's so many. I think the part about "it depends" as a phrase that makes me roll my eyes the hardest is not necessarily what it's in response to, but how it's used. So sometimes the answer is, of course, "it depends." It can be nuanced, it can be super complicated, and sometimes the question that's posed is actually kind of not answerable in that sense. Like, someone will be wanting an easy answer, and it just doesn't exist. What has always grated with me a little bit is almost the meme response. So, it's a difficult question, or someone doesn't have the answer, so they say, "It depends," and kind of in a slightly smug, knowing way, as if that's somehow a satisfactory answer, but in my experience, stakeholders, clients, colleagues, no one like, we might snigger, especially when you're at a conference and the first person say "it depends" kind of always gets a slight chuckle from the audience, but, like, "it depends" is a mask for "I don't know the answer," or "that question's hard to answer," and I think, it's always great for me because it's a real opportunity to say, "Well, tell me more about this," or "Please explain more about the situation." Or it forces SEOs to do something that SEOs find really hard, and that's have an opinion and own the answer. So if someone says "it depends," if you know the person who's asking you the question or what background or what context do you have, like, how can you remove some of the depend factors? Let's make some assumptions. Let's build a scenario that you can provide a satisfactory answer in. So if you know someone works client side, or if you know someone's in an agency, or someone's in a large business, or someone works D2C, like all of these different things can kind of help give you a little bit more that you can say, well, it does depend, but I'm going to make an attempt to answer it on what I know, and then let's have that conversation. I think that's I've kind of dodged try dodging the question a little bit. I guess, yeah, the ones that really bug me, the kind of, well, how do I know? How long does it take to work? That's the perennial one. Or the other one, I guess now we're opening it is, so when I've done this, I can, when do I finish SEOing this site? Like, I guess they're the two for really throwaway ones. But yeah, the more thoughtful answer is it annoys me that we use that as a response at all.
Yes, in fact, I think everybody use the it depends. Uh, uh,
I
this
nearly did.
the
I
phrase,
nearly did just then as well. I
yeah.
stopped myself.
But what I've learned and that I saw that was better welcome as an answer is about your option. So give me more context, etc., and I will try to answer you. Is sometimes literally be very honest and saying, I don't know. In this moment, I don't know, please. Then comes the second part. So give me time with more context. I will be able, and also I will many times, not many times, but in many cases, especially when it comes to things that I have knowledge, but I'm the first saying that don't have the biggest knowledge about, is let me inform me. I know who are the people that are really, really deep into this topic, let's say AI, information retrieval, blah, blah, blah. Because I know, but there are people like Dan Petrovich, Mike King, or Andrea, the guys of Warlift that know 10,000 times more than me.
Yeah.
So I'd say, give me the time, give me the context. I will inform myself and I will give you the best answer that I can. So this is usually pays also in terms of trust that the client has with you or your boss if you're working in house more than just saying it depends and trying to answer immediately.
The thing is, SEOs are super generally, especially the technical kind of super thoughtful, and we need the data. We have to answer with some degree of authenticity, but equally saying I don't know is kind of scary. And if you are seen as the subject expert and you're saying I don't know, like you've got to be pretty confident you're a good subject expert, because it's kind of like, well, what are they going to do? But I 100% agree. I think it's a case of, yeah, I need more time because of these reasons, but I will come back with an answer. I think that is empowering when you get to that space to use it for sure.
And talking about somehow classic frame of mind, this is just the last question, but we always are used to think and reason in best practices. But then reality show other situation where, especially let's say on the technical side of our work, not always the best practice is the best practice for the work that we have to do in that moment.
Hmm.
So let's try to be the uncle, or in my case, the grandpas of SEO, and talking to the younger generation. How would you suggest younger generation to, okay, best practices are paramount. We should always consider them, but how you would suggest them to, okay, let's try to think tangentially, laterally, and see if the best practice is not the best practice. How you would suggest these kind of things to,
Oh,
especially the younger
yeah.
generation in SEO?
So, so when I train like really new SEOs, the clearest time around like audit findings, if you're doing a site audit and you're picking out what effectively is wrong or right. And I think the most challenging thing that they always have to do is that understanding of, well, what is the most important, or what's the degree of severity, urgency in fixing this. And a lot of it's not evident. You mentioned Sightbulb and Screaming Frog earlier. Fantastic tools, do an amazing job at quickly covering the website, simulating that crawl from Google, highlighting the answers, and even do a degree of work on approximating the severity themselves. But the thing that it takes time to learn, but I always encourage SEOs to do is to think, well, what's the context? What's the business context against that technical? So some things it's really easy to say whether it's right or wrong. You're missing your XML sitemap. That's wrong. That's a really clear statement. You do not have an XML sitemap. It is recommended that you do. Okay, fine. However, how long is it going to take that business to create their XML sitemap? How easily can they maintain it? If we have that XML sitemap, what does that do differently? And when you start answering questions like that, it kind of exposes that you also need that fundamental knowledge of what the purpose of each of these things there are as well. And again, that takes time because there's a huge amount of information that you have to take on board to understand all of this. But just keeping to like the XML sitemap one, well, primarily it's a discovery tool. It's helping Google discover the pages on your website. And it's like, well, is that missing XML sitemap leading to pages not getting discovered at all, or not getting discovered as quickly as they might do? So, then the cascade of events, you would need to then go and check your navigation. Is your navigation crawlable? Do you have many pages which are orphaned, i.e. that you can't find from a crawl from the homepage? And you then start to work out that there are actually scenarios where a missing XML sitemap might be not compliant or not recommended, but it might also have no obvious or reportable impact to the overall. And I think it's learning that. And I did this myself. Like my first job in an agency was auditing websites. I got given a technical audit in my first 2 weeks. I had Screaming Frog and Xenu, and I built an audit, and I found loads of issues that were wrong, and I wrote them all out and I sent them to the straight to the dev agency that had built the website, not to the client. And it went really badly. I thought I'd absolutely knocked it out of the park. I'd found loads of issues, but I did a very poor job at prioritizing them, because a lot of them, this site was built in .NET, so a lot of them would have taken forever to fix, would have yielded no benefit. But I also really, really annoyed the developer as kind of part of that. So I didn't have the business context to make the right recommendations, and then I communicated in a way that was never going to get the response I wanted. So I think it's really focusing on, firstly, just why is that best practice? Do you know what impact that has? If you don't, the more you take the time to learn that, the more incisive your recommendations later on will be, and the better your prioritization will be. And it just takes time. But that's the thing. If anyone needed to get into technical SEO, that's the thing that you have to work on. You really need that foundational knowledge.
Yeah, perfect. And I was imagining in this case, the devs rolling the eyes to your it bins.
They did more than that. But I
Well,
had one or two very cross phone calls to deal with at the time, so that was fun.
now let's go a little bit personal. For the people watching or listening to us, there are quite a few things that I discovered that Chris and I have in common, especially if we go to the university years.
All right.
Yes, you told me a few days ago that you also study semiotics, for instance, like me, but I discovered that you also studied history of film theory, and I did the same. I mean, my specialization when I was in university was history of cinema, and actually, my thesis
Oh,
was
don't
about
test me on my history. Don't test my
no,
I've
no, no,
forgotten
no,
half
no.
of it.
But yeah, but the question is, so what of your studies
Mm,
are all of a sudden becoming relevant
mm.
for your work? Because
Yeah.
yeah, when I started doing SEO, sincerely, all the study about linguistic or even multimedia, certain point weren't so relevant for the work I was doing up until a few years ago. But now, all of a sudden,
Mm.
all these things that I study are becoming relevant. So, it's something that is happening also to you.
So I think for me, I mean, there's a couple. I think a lot of what I studied was around meaning making, and that whole kind of idea of the polysemy, like multiple meanings behind things. And I think that whole idea of how people derive meaning, how people make meaning, how people interpret stuff is different. And that's been super useful for just kind of critical thinking. And when you start getting more to customer journeys, when you start getting to understanding intent, or even to a degree, just empathizing with a user at a given point, I think just actually approaching any text, web page, film, whatever, with just that whole kind of thing of, well, I may take a meaning from this, but that meaning isn't not necessarily what everyone's taking. Even the meaning that the creator has kind of inscribed into it. Like, I think a lot of that is super valuable. Actually, the biggest learning I did is part of my film studies. I did ethnography, so I did like audience research, and I was looking at the adaptation theory. So how books are converted to films, not just that, like video games to films, books to films, films to books, like any kind of adaptation, how like one medium is moved to another. But the audience research part that I did was for my undergrad. I didn't realize this, but I was effectively scraping web forums to monitor sentiment around adaptations. And that I didn't know, frankly, I didn't really know what SEO was when I was doing that, but that ability to scrape content, to measure sentiment, to use forums to like mine for information around, what people do and don't like. That was super formative without me really even knowing it. My postgrads, when I did my master's level one, it was more focused around qualitative research. So this was more specific audience questionnaires or one-on-one like interviews. And again, similar thing, like in terms of how do you design questionnaires that don't lead people? How do you research what people think without kind of confirmation bias or polluting it with the wrong questions? And that's helped me on analysis, on content creation. I used to do more kind of like link building using content and did a lot around that. And those things absolutely underpin what I spend all of my time doing now. And that's before we even get to like, I know how to read academic texts, like referencing systems, how to research, like ignore all of that part, like those core skills. Broadly, anyone with a humanities degree might have got that. And I mean, we can learn code and web, like these core skills about like understanding audiences and finding this data and information. Yeah, I use that all the time now. And I 100% see that as so valuable.
And when you are not working on SEO or thinking about SEO or writing about SEO, what do you like to do?
Oh, I've done that thing that people seem to do right now. Of you get to your mid to late 30s and you think, I need to take control or like ownership of my health. So I'm active a lot more. I kind of out exercising like 5 or 6 times a week now. And besides that, I have 2 kids that occupy a lot of my time. Still play games every now and then, nowhere near as much as I used to, but I get a snatch of that. Yeah, they're kind of my key ones. I mean, recently when you say what do you do when you're not thinking about SEO, like over the last kind of weeks and months, sleeping. It has been quite full on. I tend to, when I get locked into something, it's not just my 9 to 5. I tend to, my brain is always engaged in it somehow. So
And
yeah.
yes, and I mean, when the doctor says that people should always be constant and sleep at least 7 hours per night, it's true. Because if
Yeah.
not, you're going to burn out too much. Even if you are not working, but just because you are tired. And talking about games, curiosity, what is your most beloved game?
Oh, oh wow! No, that's the hardest question I think you asked. So for me to, I think the most formative. There's 2, but one of them is Half-Life back on the PC, and then the original Halo game. I think those 2 were 2 of my kind of formative ones. But then we could go off for another half an hour of like listing ones. I know Jono and Mark have asked similar questions, and we've ended up
Yeah,
talking
yeah, yes.
for many
I
hours.
was.
You'll see my misspent youth. There's quite a
That
lot.
could be a special Verser session video game edition.
I think there's a lot of SEOs who would take you up on that. I think we're gamers have infiltrated everywhere.
And just last question about you. What is the sound that you like the most? It can be a natural sound. It can be a song that maybe is reminding you of something.
This is kind of cliched, but it's morning bird song. So I leave the house at about 5, 5:15 every morning, and especially in the summer, the sun's just started to rise. The birds have just started to sing. That's probably the quietest, calmest part of my day. I have to wake up early to get it. Whatever mood I wake up in, within about 15 minutes of getting out, just that always sets me on track for the day. And that's, yeah, there's something in that. I think the other one is running water, rivers, the sea. That's like my second best, but I don't live near running water, so I'd have to travel a long way for it. So I'll take the one that's on my doorstep. So it's that morning bird song.
Okay, thank you, Grace. It has been wonderful to have you in this episode. And I mean, I think you offer us and to our listeners and watchers many things to think about. And it was a really a nice, pleasant conversation.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you,
Well, it's been a
Grace.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
And thank you to all of you for watching me, for watching Chris. And remember, subscribe, click ring on the bell, and give it a like to this video. And see you to the next episode.